Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar, Automate Your Cloud Infrastructure with the HashiCorp products. This is the first installment in our three-part webinar series on how to deliver applications faster to the cloud. And so today I'll be your host. My name is Joe Schultz. I'll turn my camera on for a second so you can put a face to the name. I'm actually the VP of Emerging Technology for Oracy Software. Been with the company and with this group of people for a long, long time. And I'm happy to present today. I was supposed to be joined today, unfortunately, or I was supposed to be joined, fortunately, by someone from HashiCorp, but unfortunately, they couldn't make it today due to illness. So you're just going to have to live with me today. I'll be your host and kind of run through this presentation. We were also hoping to deliver a short demo, 5 to 10 minute kind of demo, just to show you something in action. We won't be able to do that today, but I promise in the subsequent demos, we had much more involved demos planned to show you the actual products working in action. So those demos will move forward in the subsequent webinars. So for today, you'll just have to listen to me, and I have got a couple of pictures that I think you'll find very interesting. And so with that, I wanted to also mention that if you're new to the BrightTalk interface, you can look on the right-hand side. You'll see a series of icons. Click those icons there. Provide various functions. The most important is the question mark icon, where you can suggest or ask questions of the panel here. I've got myself and I've got Ross Beard from HashiCorp in the background as well, taking a look at questions, and we'll either answer through that chat panel or we can answer your questions live on air as well. So feel free to submit questions anytime during the presentation. If we don't get a chance to answer questions during the presentation, then we'll make sure to follow up with you through email afterwards. And with that, I'll go ahead and jump in. Let me share my screen here. Okay. And as I said, today is the first in a series of webinars. It's actually a 4-part series, 3 product-focused parts, and 1 technique-focused part. So today, I'm going to lay some groundwork and describe how to use this infrastructure as code approach to deploy, to automate your cloud infrastructure. In later webinars, then, what we'll do is we'll take a deeper dive into each of those major areas. And for each, as I said, we will show you a demonstration of how the technology actually works. The final webinar then will be a discussion about some case studies, and we'll show you some real examples of how we've helped our customers use these tools and techniques to automate their infrastructure. Now, if you're not familiar with Oracy, we're a leader in the DevSecOps industry. So DevSecOps is kind of a mouthful, but basically it includes everything you need to do to get an application developed and operationalized in a secure manner. It includes both process and tools in order to make all this happen, and focuses heavily on automation so that it's efficient and productive. We actually started out almost 30 years ago in this space. In those days, it was just kind of development and QA, quality assurance. And we developed our own tools, and we also resold tools from vendors. And along the way, then, we've expanded our core competencies to include deployment technologies, security tooling, analytics, and even some training tools to help with deployment and uptake of the technology. And all of this is with a focus on helping customers move their applications to the cloud. In the last few years, we have specialized on helping customers move to the cloud quickly and efficiently. And we do that with a number of different technologies. So this is a big slide with a lot of stuff, and I'm not going to talk about all of these areas or all of these vendors. But the point is that we have a comprehensive suite of technologies that we know how to implement. For each individual tool, we provide first-line sales and support based from Oracy employees. And in addition, we have a team of experts that specialize in the different areas that know how to implement these tools. So we can help you quickly and easily learn and implement these tools yourselves. So we provide some turnkey services, but really our specialty is in making you productive with the technology so that you can move forward on your own. If you're not familiar with the Oracy sales executive in your area, feel free to send a chat message in that chat box that I talked about a minute ago, and I'll be happy to connect you to the right person at Oracy to get you in touch with somebody that can help you either in a specific area or with a specific tool. Okay, so having said all that, that kind of brings us to the heart of today's discussion, moving to the cloud. Virtually every customer that we talk to these days has some sort of cloud initiative going. Whether it's a large-scale redesign of some application to kind of take advantage of containers, like Kubernetes or whatever, or if it's just a simple what we call a lift and shift project where customers try and move their dedicated infrastructure into the cloud in order, as is, in order to take advantage of the cloud scalability. No matter what it is, everybody's working on these kinds of issues, these kinds of projects, and everybody has questions. And for most people that I talk to, at least, their first attempt ends up targeting a specific cloud vendor, picking one like AWS or Azure, and they learn the proprietary interfaces, the web portal, the consoles that the vendors provide, the scripting languages that vendors provide, the automation tools that the vendors provide. And they use these to deploy their project to the cloud. They build cloud resources like, virtual servers and cloud databases. And what I hear all the time is that they very quickly realize that even though it sounds really easy, it's not. Specifically, it requires a steep learning curve on all this new stuff. The employees, either existing employees, or you have to hire expensive new employees that have to learn these skills, these new things, new tools, new languages, new techniques. So there's an expensive training proposition there. And in either case, whether it's new employees or you're hiring new employees or you're using your existing staff, there's a long lead time of unproductive time just to develop this. So there's this steep learning curve that costs a lot of money. And then you do the work, right? Then you do whatever it was you had planned to do after you go through all of that. And even if it works all the way you expected, one problem is that you're stuck with that vendor forever. I mean, you're stuck to that vendor until you go through this effort again and learn some new technology. Even when other vendors leapfrog one another with new tools and techniques, you end up being stuck in whatever you picked in the first case. And then, to make all of this worse, you find that some of your applications can't move to the cloud, or at least they can't move to public cloud for either security or regulatory reasons usually. And so you're stuck building private cloud components that have to integrate with these public cloud. And so, the whole point of all of this is that in the end, it usually takes a lot longer and is a lot more expensive and a lot more brittle than most people expect. So that's the problems that we see, and when I talk to customers about who are further along in their journey, and I talk to them about, what they're doing to fix these problems, the common thread I hear is this term infrastructure as code, or IAC. And that's really what I want to talk about today is infrastructure as code. So infrastructure as code is a new architecture style. It's a new development technique, if you will, for the operations and architecture folks. It's, often kind of created by the IT department, the operations team, the deployment team, whatever you call them in your organization. But it's also applicable to things like the development team for unit testing and the quality assurance team for testing operations. It's a style of implementation that can be applied to a lot of points in the development life cycle. And specifically, IAC is a way to take the techniques that we've been refining for application development for the past 30 years and applying it to infrastructure. It revolves around building a version code base, but in this case, the code base is automation scripts usually, which create and manage cloud resources or architecture resources, because they don't always have to be cloud resources. So you're building these version automation scripts that, for example, provision a virtual machine, let's say, and storing that in a repository, a version control repository, just like we've been doing code for, as I said, 30, 40 years we've been doing this. That makes it a very collaborative and structured environment. It makes the scripts have a higher consistency and integrity level. And to make this even better, what we do then is we apply to these scripts templates. We base them off of templates usually, and we apply policies, predefined policies that make sure that these scripts, meet our core requirements for how our architecture is supposed to look. So, rather than the script author then having to, individually create things for one-off applications, what we're doing is we're building a library of deployable components that will create this infrastructure for you. Now, as development, as IT, we've been building scripts for a long time. I mean, since the first line of code was written, somebody tried to figure out some way to automate the process. So, we've been doing a lot of that kind of automation work for a long time. But what's new now with infrastructure as code is this orchestration layer in the bubble there. That orchestration layer is a set of tools and techniques that take those scripts and intelligently apply them to the architecture. So, for example, rather than having to build a script for provisioning a machine, and then a script for changing the machine, and a script for deleting the machine, the orchestration layer can decide, based upon the current design, what needs to happen. It can apply intelligently those changes that are necessary to keep the infrastructure up to date, whether it's cloud infrastructure or on-premise infrastructure, traditional private cloud kind of infrastructure as well. And it includes not just the application components, which we've been automating for years, but also the storage components, the networking components, even the security policies that underlie all of this. So it's an entire kind of holistic approach that applies these scripts in an intelligent manner so that we can maintain this version repository as a set of, our current system of record, basically, for what our architecture is supposed to look like. So that's what IAC is. That's what infrastructure as code is a technique for developing these things rather than manually building machines and manually starting them, having a script repository that drives all of that through an orchestration layer. And that's where HashiCorp comes in. So HashiCorp was, one of the leaders, one of the pioneers in this infrastructure as code movement. You guys probably have heard the name before. HashiCorp's been around for a long time, since kind of the beginning of this movement. And they basically invented a lot of these core terms, a lot of these core ideas, and developed tools then that implement them. Specifically, HashiCorp tools focus on flexible targets. And what I mean by that is that they target a lot of different technologies, a lot of different providers. So they don't just target Amazon or just Azure or just GCP. They target all of them. They target private cloud technologies, VMware and things like that. They target, containerized approaches. They target dozens, literally, I believe at this point, it's hundreds of possible target technologies that you can deploy to. So you as a customer don't have to learn the individual syntax for any of those specific tools, vendors. You don't have to go learn how an automation script varies between Azure and AWS and decide which one you want to use. What you do is you build a script that targets a cloud infrastructure technique. And then HashiCorp will apply that based upon your decisions at runtime. That also lets you change your targets. So maybe you want to run on Amazon today, and tomorrow you want to put a part of it on Azure, so you can mix and match as you need to over time. It's also based on a common syntax. So again, I'm not learning Azure syntax specifically versus GCP. What I'm doing is building a common syntax that can be deployed in a variety of methods. Now, those syntaxes sometimes are also extended to support the vendor-specific technology. So if you choose to implement some vendor-specific options, features, you can. But if you stay to core cloud competencies, then you have the freedom to mix and match at will over time. So your team learns one syntax is the point versus having to learn each of these tools individually. And then finally, the breakthrough, I think, in the HashiCorp technology is managing state. And what I mean by that is that the orchestration layer, the HashiCorp tools, know what your current technology looks like, what your current architecture looks like. And if your scripts describe an architecture that's slightly different, it will intelligently apply the updates that are necessary to get the existing architecture to the desired state. So I, as a script writer, script author, don't have to spend my time analyzing the world. Instead, the HashiCorp tools can analyze the world for you and figure out what needs to be done. And then when I'm satisfied that the tools have made the right decisions, I can press the button to apply that in a single operation, and all of those changes get applied across all of the various targets that might be involved. So it takes me out of the impact analysis role where I have to spend all of my time analyzing what's there today. If somebody makes a change in Azure directly for some emergency patch, I don't have to worry that my script is now out of date because it will automatically be corrected at application time, at apply time. So that's kind of the approach that HashiCorp has taken to all of their products, and they all fit into this model and provide that intelligent orchestration layer. Now, I keep talking about the HashiCorp products. So here's a list of them. As you can see, there's quite a few, actually. The company's been around a long time, and they've deployed a number of different technologies in various phases. And they all focus around 4 key aspects of the cloud migration or cloud movement, cloud architecture. And those 4 are listed there at the bottom. So they are provision, secure, connect, and run. So provision is all about building your artifacts and creating the resources that are necessary to make things happen. Secure then is all about managing the security policies and making sure that those artifacts we deploy and the applications that are going to use them follow all of our security policies and adhere to the compliance and regulatory constraints that we have. It also involves managing those secrets in an intelligent way so that I can build automated expiration policies, for example, for my passwords and API keys and things like that. Connect then layers on top of that to kind of abstract out the connectivity so that I can manage the connections, the layers of the architecture without having to hard code in IP addresses and specific machine names and architecture layers and cloud names and things like that. So it creates a dynamic connection layer that then all of our architecture components can draw from in order to dynamically attach to each other. And then run is the entire environment. It actually manages the runtime components of all of these things that we've been talking about. So provision, secure, connect, and run are the four phases in the life cycle that you go through. And generally, people kind of walk through the process in that order. Now, that's not a given. I've had a lot of customers that jump into the secure model first because that's where their biggest pain point is, for example, is managing secrets. And so the secure products, Vault specifically, are sometimes the starting point for people in the HashiCorp tools. More often, though, the provision space is where people start with either Terraform or Packer. And that's how they build their architecture components to begin with. So where you start is going to vary. What's important to you will depend upon where your pain points are. But all of these products, the names that you see on the screen, are available to use in the various areas of deployment. Now, in subsequent webinars, as I mentioned, we're going to dive into these one after the other. So the next webinar in October will focus on the provisioning step, and we'll talk a lot about Terraform and Packer particularly, and we'll do a demonstration of those products. The November webinar then will focus on the secure space, and we'll demonstrate the Vault and Boundary capabilities and how that then integrates with the provisioning tools, Terraform and Packer, for example, as well as how it integrates into the application space itself. Now, for most people, implementing tools like this can't be done all at once. You can't just say, okay, today I'm going to stop doing what I used to do and I'm going to start doing this new thing. I mean, it'd be nice if that's the way the world worked, but for most people, that's not the case. Instead, you kind of move into this a piece at a time. And so HashiCorp has also built these products so that they are easily implemented in waves, so to speak, based upon where you are in your journey. And you can even then slice that up by the areas that we were talking about: provision, secure, run, and operate. And so, for example, if you look at Terraform, Terraform's a provisioning tool. It's all about building artifacts for you, resources on the back end. And so for most people, they start out slow in the establish column there, using the infrastructure as code kind of technique that I talked about, build scripts to develop their architecture and then apply them. Then you might move into secrets management, where you start managing your passwords and API keys and other secret objects as reusable components that are centrally controlled in a version repository. And so that's kind of the next step you might go into. Then maybe you've got a real security need, so you drive forward and you move into encryption as a service, which is another kind of the next layer. And maybe you go all the way up to the advanced data protection, where you're managing every piece of data within your application as a secure, reusable object. So how you implement these is going to vary. It's going to be varied by product. It's going to vary by where you are in your journey, and the tools, of course, mirror that kind of capability mesh, if you will, that you can take advantage of at your own pace. I'll mention at this point, a lot of people have heard of HashiCorp because their products are also available as open source products. So much of the functionality in the established column is available as free downloadable objects that products that you can download and use at no cost. If you go back to the slide that I showed a few minutes ago, it mentioned 100 million downloads. There are literally more than 100 million downloads a year of the HashiCorp products. And a good percentage of these are in that open source category, in that established capability level. And then as you move into needing Teams capability, collaborative capability, multi-cloud, the more advanced kinds of capabilities, that's where you might then upgrade to a paid subscription of one form or another. And so all of that, to use a marketing buzzword here, is unlocking the cloud operating model. HashiCorp is all about enabling a robust cloud operating model across all four of those components that I mentioned earlier: provision, secure, connect, and run. Whether it's your platform team using these tools to implement architecture, or your actual development teams themselves to implement their testing and QA spaces, as well as their operational application stack. It doesn't matter. It's the same tooling, it's the same scripting, it's the same language in all of those cases. So it's a very easy step forward into this infrastructure as code model. And then on the back end, the HashiCorp stack can take advantage of virtually any cloud or infrastructure technology that you've seen today. You see a number of the most popular ones listed there, things like Amazon and Microsoft, Google, VMware, etc. But literally there are dozens, or as I said, I believe it's literally hundreds of providers now, services that HashiCorp tools can deploy to. And so, as I said, this is a technique that you can deploy, that you can apply, whether you're interested in the techniques or the tools or both. Oracy would be glad to help you. We'd be glad to talk you through that journey, help you do an assessment maybe of where you are today, and then either provide tools or provide people to help you learn or provide people to help you do whatever makes sense in your particular situation. And so that's what I wanted to talk about today. As I said, in future webinars, then we'll dive into more details around this. And we'll talk about, for example, in October, as I mentioned, we'll talk about provisioning. We'll talk about the Terraform product and the Packer product and how they help you build architecture. In November, then we'll talk about managing your secrets, how the Vault and Boundary products can help you build a robust security model that ensures compliance and policy adherence. And then finally, in December, we'll talk about how to roll all this together into a project-focused initiative, how you take all these various pieces and build a deliverable plan in order to move your applications to the cloud. And so at this point, I'll kind of pause here and see if there's any questions. So any questions from the crowd, feel free to use the chat box here and enter your questions and we'll get to them. I do see one question here. It says, will you be sharing a recording of these webinars? And yes, absolutely, we will. All of the participants on the who registered for it, the session will get a recording as well as a list of questions that were asked and answered. If you also, as I mentioned, if you do submit a question and we don't get a chance to answer it here, we'll be glad to answer you through email as well. Looks like there's another question here. I'm just kind of reading these as we go through. Another question is, I'm currently using the open source version of Terraform and am curious as to why I should upgrade. We'll actually cover that in great detail next webinar. So in October, we'll talk about the specific features in each of the list, in each product and how they compare. But at a high level, I can tell you that there are essentially three versions of the Terraform product right now. And this is true of virtually all of the HashiCorp products. There's an open source version, which is focused on individual practitioners. So it provides basic functionality around infrastructure as code for the particular focus area. And it works, out of the box for anybody. You download it, you can start using it immediately. When you need to upgrade, there are usually one or two different flavors of the enterprise level product. So Terraform, for example, has a Terraform Enterprise and it has a Terraform Cloud product. And both of those have functionality focused around team collaboration, around enterprise cloud deployment, so multi-cloud, for example. Things like adding the compliance and regulatory adherence. So, being able to apply governance policies to your scripts, things like that. It's all these tools that go above and beyond the individual practitioner doing their thing. As soon as you want to get into a team or organizational level deployment, that's where the the HashiCorp Enterprise or cloud platform products come into play. And so again, we'll focus on the specific features for Terraform and talk about those in the next webinar. We'll do the same thing for Vault in the November webinar. There's also a question here. It says, I've never heard of HashiCorp before. Have they been around long? And yes, I mean, HashiCorp's been around, as I said, kind of since the beginning of this infrastructure as cloud movement. It's interesting because I actually hadn't heard the name HashiCorp for a long time until a couple of 3 years ago, I guess it was. And at that time, I thought, well, who are they? And then I found out they were Terraform. And of course, I've been hearing about Terraform for years. Virtually every one of my customers that I talk to is using Terraform in some form or fashion to deploy architecture. So it's interesting that I find a lot of people know the product names, particularly Terraform, Packer, Vault, but they're less often that they know the name HashiCorp. But the HashiCorp is the company, Terraform, Vault, et cetera, are the products. So yes, they've been around a long time. And as I said, literally hundreds of millions of downloads of their products and thousands of enterprise customers across the world. Okay, I'm getting the wave here from my marketing team. We're 1 minute over our 30 minutes, so I won't keep any longer. I'll go through the questions, and any others that were in the panel, I will answer through email, and I thank you for your attendance. Look forward to seeing all of you on your next on our next webinar. And in the meantime, feel free to contact anybody from Oracy. You see my contact information on the screen here now. And down below is our Twitter and LinkedIn information as well. Down below, I've also got contact for HashiCorp, including the contact information for Andy Barron from HashiCorp. He was the one who was supposed to be here today, but unfortunately couldn't be with us due to illness. So if you want to send Andy a get well card or something, there's his email address. So I look forward to working with Andy in the future, and he'll be on our future webinars. Thank you, everybody, and I appreciate your time and attendance today. Feel free to write us or contact us in any way if you have any further questions. Take care.